All right, welcome back. Former President Trump meeting with Joe Biden in the Oval Office today. A lot of it centered around foreign policy. We understand they talked a lot about the Middle East, also about Ukraine. And Joe Biden's foreign policy regime may go down as one of the worst and most disloyal in history. We have yet another pro-Iran scandal to report tonight. A CIA official charged and arrested in Cambodia Monday for leaking highly classified intelligence to Iran about Israel's military operations. We keep seeing this again and again, whether it's from the Biden State Department or in this case coming out of the CIA. The Iranian terror regime has gotten very wealthy thanks to Joe Biden. During the campaign, they worked to have Trump assassinated, as you know, fearing his return to Washington. They failed in this. So what does Iran do now? And what does the next 4 years look like? Reza Pahlavi is the exiled crown prince of Iran, and he joins us tonight. And, sir, it's good to have you back on the show. We have Trump returning at a very interesting time. The former president returns to Washington. I wonder how you think he is going to handle Iran over the next 4 years.
Before we focus on a second term, I would like to indicate in a general picture what we have witnessed over 4 decades being the attitude and comportment of the regime. And one of the aspects that I think everybody should realize is that every time the regime was under pressure or dealt with from a position of strength, it backed away and adjusted tactically to that reality. Every time, on the other hand, there was some laxing or if you will, less pressure or even appeasement, it got emboldened and strengthened.
Yes.
By that, I would like to contrast the first term that President Trump had, and in fact, he was the most strong in terms of foreign policy as it came to implementing maximum pressure on the regime. I think a continuation of that maximum pressure is certainly what is called for.
Yeah.
But I would add another component to it, which is parallel to maximum pressure. There ought to be also a policy of maximum support for the people. Because ultimately, if change is to happen, it will have to be at the hand of the Iranian people. But they are facing an extremely brutal regime, and they cannot do it completely defenseless and with not any help. And I hope that's something that will build into his foreign policy.
Well, that's what I want to ask, because this is the regime that's supporting, you know, the bulk of the terror in the Middle East. This is the country that is making that entire region such a liability for the West, for the United States. I mean, Iran is the cancer. That regime is the cancer. It comes out of that country. My question to you is, if they go maximum pressure, they're gonna strangle them, you know, financially, which is the right thing to do. If it gets to the point where maybe a revolution is in the works inside of Iran in a couple years, is there a way for the United States and Israel to support that?
Well, of course, because look, when we saw ultimate changes occur in countries that were faced with extremely repressive or totalitarian regimes, it was as a result of the citizens of those countries getting emboldened and heartened and strengthened in terms of, you know, empowering them to combat the governments that they were facing. I think we saw the example of it in Poland with Lech Walesa. We saw the case of South Africa and Nelson Mandela. And as a result, I think every time people are empowered, they become the alternative beyond the status quo. Because I think one of the problems we have had in 4 decades is that there was a flaw in the overall foreign policy of Western governments dealing with this regime, because it was all based on an expectation of behavior change. Now you're not dealing.
And why? Just not to cut you off, but why is that? Why is it that they can't understand? This goes all the way back to, you know, even to Carter. I mean, this goes back 40 years. They think that if they're nice to Iran and they make the regime wealthy, that will get to the people. What amount of the wealth that Iran has received in the last 3.5, 4 years? How much of that has actually gotten to the Iranian people?
None of it. In fact, that's the very argument that when you embolden the regime, when you, through appeasement, gave them access to billions of dollars that they shouldn't have had in the first place, they're not going to spend it on the starving people on the streets of Iran. They're going to spend it on their proxies, and it's not surprising that as a result of that strengthening, you have an October 7th type.
And why is it that our government can't figure that out? Why is it that I can't imagine that our State Department is that stupid.
Look, I think so long as the mindset has been, can we find a way to cut a deal with the regime, we're stuck in the woods. But if we begin to understand that the solution to the problem ultimately is for this regime to be no longer there, then you start thinking of an alternative beyond the status quo.
But
this paradigm has to occur.
Trump's not going to start a war with Iran. I mean, that's not his way. So I guess my question is, I would love to see this cancer removed. You know, I don't want to think that for the next 50 years we're going to be dealing with an Iranian regime that's trying to kill Israel, that's chanting death to America. How does that happen when you have an American president like Trump that doesn't want a new war?
Well, nobody wants war. Iranians don't want war. Even Prime Minister Netanyahu, in his last speech to the Iranian people a couple of days ago, said, we don't want war either. But the solution is to be on the side of the people because they are, in fact, the element of change. I think in the overall mindset in America, perhaps a lot of people are weary of America's involvement in the region and they want out. Certainly, President Trump seems to have indicated that. But by removing yourselves totally from the picture, you're creating a vacuum that will be filled by China or Russia or whatever proxies that the regime is benefiting from to maintain itself in existence. I'm not suggesting that the solution is direct conflict with Iran. The solution is to make sure that the Iranian people have a better equal playing field so they from internally bring pressure that will force the regime to collapse. Because a different Iran will be an Iran that is seeking peace and collaboration with its neighbors as opposed to calling for the destruction of a country or its citizens. And that should be the foundation of the approach to the Iranian solution, which will ultimately make America breathe easier, not by deploying its fleets to maintain stability, but depending on a nation that is freed from a regime that, unlike them, celebrates martyrdom and death, whereas we want to celebrate life and peace with our neighbors in the region.
Not an external regime change. It has to be organic. It has to be from within and then supported and nurtured by the West, by Israel and the United States. Reza Pahlavi, sir, thank you so much for coming on tonight. It's good to see you.
Thank you so much.